Gabby. I was told that I had two jobs. One of them was the housekeeping, and you've already taken that away from me. So I guess all that's left is introducing Gary. Oops. Sorry, let me take my screen off here. On a side note, I should probably reposition my camera because the Notre Dame stuff is showing in the back, and with so many Columbus people, half you probably hate me already. But hopefully you'll bear with me. My daughter made it for me. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Teams, we'll call it State of the Union webinar. First, just want to thank everybody for your attendance. I know you're probably bombarded with these webinar requests over, since COVID, and so we definitely appreciate your time, and I think it'll be time well spent. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rob Schmidauer. I'm one of the owners of Parallel, and I run the Cincinnati sales office. And evidently, I'm a host for the call today, which again gives me two responsibilities. One other thing that I think you'll hear throughout is that our goal today is not to make you experts on Teams, certainly with Teams integration, but it is just to give you a glimpse of what's available out there. If you guys want us to come in and get much deeper into your environment, that will be through your account rep, or if you wanted to just reach out to Larissa or somebody on the call. So we're very anxious to come in and talk about your specific environment. But again, the goal today is just the state of the union for Teams and touch on how we can possibly integrate some phone solutions. The person that's going to lead us through that discussion is Gary Dyer. Gary's been with Parallel for a short time, but he's got quite an extensive past. He's got about 23 years of IT experience, most recently at the Revolution Group, where he served as the managing director. His contribution to Parallel so far is immeasurable, not just with the operations folks, but with the sales folks as well. And he's just an all-around good guy. So with that, Gary, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Rob. I appreciate you. Yeah, today I'm going to try to make this a little educational. There's so much confusion around Microsoft and even what it's called. Is it Office 365? Is it Teams? Is it Skype? What is the difference between Microsoft 365 and Office 365? There's been a lot more focus with people working from home and using different technologies that we thought it'd be good to try to demystify or explain what are these different functionality tools. So let me dive into explaining what we're even talking about. So Office 365 is a suite of applications that you're really familiar with. Your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, so on and so forth. And Microsoft took that and put it into a subscription-based model. Everything, in case you haven't caught on, is going to a subscription-based model. My car wash is now a subscription-based model. So everything is going that direction. So Microsoft software and their push is no different. And so now you may already have Office 365 and you may not know it, but that's how your IT department typically goes through and purchases the things, the Office suite. Now, Microsoft 365 historically was the Office 365 suite, which was Word, Excel, PowerPoint, even maybe your email. And then it added features like Windows 10 Pro. Now, not if I bought a blank computer and I can put Windows 10 Pro, but if I already had Windows 7 and I'm needing to migrate my team, that would allow me to upgrade those licenses to the Microsoft suite. It also included Enterprise Mobility and Security. This is often referred to as EM&S. As you heard Rob say, I come from a long line of being an IT guy. I'm now learning to be a phone guy. So I know us IT guys, we love our acronyms, and I'll try really hard to make sure I don't bombard you with acronyms today. But EM&S, this Enterprise Mobility and Security, is a big focus point for them because it's security is a very big hot button. So having multi-factor authentication, having BitLocker to encrypt your laptops, the list goes on and on of what they do with it, and they wrap that into that Microsoft suite. Now, to make things a little more confusing, Office 365 is getting rebranded as of April to Microsoft 365. So there won't be two separate things. So you will start hearing people referring to Office 365 as Microsoft 365 more and more often. So don't let that confuse you. It's just rebranding of the same thing. It's the suite of apps. Now, where we went from there then is you hear people talking about Skype. Still, when they're even on a Teams phone system, they'll say, I'll Skype you, like it's a verb, like you Google something now. Skype is a software that allows you to make communication from your laptop. It was getting a lot of momentum, and then Microsoft bought them. Microsoft wanted that presence. So Microsoft has tried for quite a while to work their way into the phone industry, and they started with a few other apps, and then they went into Lync more recently. You may have heard of that if you're an IT guy on the phone. And then from Lync, they didn't have the point of presence and all the global connections that Skype had. So they bought Skype for that global presence around the world. And then now that they're moving this focus to Teams, they're wrapping that functionality into Teams. So Skype is actually different than Teams, even though they're going to have that same functionality. You can see there's different things. So Skype was a pretty mature product when they bought it. It already had enterprise grade security. It already had some administration tools to it that the enterprise guys could do as they're rolling it out. But Teams also has enterprise grade security. So you'll see a lot of that functionality coming over there from Skype to Teams. So when you hear people talking about this, again, now you may realize when they're talking about Teams, Teams is just a collaboration application that is part of your Office 365 suite that you've already purchased. So that's their goal with the Teams application is when you're working on a project together, they don't want you to leave that app. Their goal, Microsoft, is, so I'm in this program and we're working on this spreadsheet and this presentation or whatever this project is, and we have a spreadsheet here, maybe have a Word document, and we need to instant message each other or do a chat like a chat board or a post. And this application allows you to store all those things in one place. So the instant messaging worked that way. So now I'm here and I need to message Rob from within this piece, and it kept it all in one place. So their push for their phone systems to do something similar. So how do we get where we are today? You guys may or may not have heard of this COVID thing. It's if you haven't heard about it, it's trending. You'll hear about it soon. We have a lot of people at the office, and now they are working from home, right? Everybody. Now, not that we didn't work from home before, but it was not to the scale that we do now. So the IT guys, and I keep picking on them, remember my background, so bear with me. So the IT guys, typically when you're in headquarters, you had to worry about file sharing. You had to worry about messaging each other. You had to worry about conferencing if you're going to be on a conference call like we are today, right? You had a lot of things you had to worry about. And then people go home. And the IT guys had to figure out, well, while you're working from home, you still need access to these files. You still need a message, and you're still doing some of these conferencing. How do I give you this functionality in a way without making it too complex, too complicated? And most offices already had Office 365, which included Teams. So here was the push, the catalyst to them finally getting progress on using Teams. Most industries have Teams already with their Office 365 suite. They just weren't utilizing it. They weren't taking advantage of it. So this put a lot of emphasis behind that product and how to use it for those things. Well, as people start using it and getting comfortable, like all of us, we started using the different features of it. Well, what does this do? And what does that do? And so quickly they realized that, Jack and Jill can call each other from within the Teams app. And then if somebody's on their Teams, they could also call them if they're in the office and they're calling from home. And as an end user getting familiar and comfortable with this, you're like, hey, IT guy, I try to call Best Buy and it doesn't work. But I can call Jack or Jill or Diane. You'll reference the music song later. Anyways, it works, and I can call each other, but not Best Buy. And this is where the confusion starts to set in. There is a connection that you need to, again, remember all the acronyms. There's the phone network is called the PSTN. And so when you have your Teams application, although you can call each other, you don't have a connection to the outside world. Think of it as if we bought a phone system And we bought a building across the street, and we went over there and we plugged this phone system in. And I plugged in my phone and you plugged in your phone, and we called each other. And this is great. But if we haven't called a carrier like AT&T, Verizon, whoever, to bring a phone line into the building, all we'll be able to do is talk to each other, right? So Teams works that way. I need a connection to call the outside world to make that PSTN connection. And that's where things start to get complicated. When we get in there, there's multiple ways to handle that part, the calling outside of my organization. Now, I'm not here to make your eyes glaze over today and be overly technical as an engineer, but at least want you to have the understanding of where the trials and tribulations may be, which ones work best for you, and we can talk more about that. So the three most common ways are using the Microsoft plan that I'll get into deeper, using some sort of direct routing with rather a hosted PBX, which is old school phone system that you may have, or doing a third-party calling plan. And I'll talk about each one of these three and kind of explain them a little bit more. So often here on Microsoft 365, well, we should switch to this because it's free. We can get free phones if we go through our RD Teams account. Well, let's dive into that because the Microsoft bundle, and I've already started calling it here, the Microsoft 365 instead of the Office 365, has several different flavors. So you have the E1, E3, E5. Remember us IT guys like to throw acronyms? These are just the different sizes of your bundles. So we have the basic plan, and then you go up to the E3. E3 is probably the most common that I've seen out there. And then E5 is more of that enterprise and adds a lot more of the enterprise functionality. So you've got to pay per person, right? A monthly fee, depending on which features you want, one of these plans here. So we've already got that component. Now I want to add phones. If I'm adding the phone system component, that is another $8 a month on top of whatever plan you already had. Unless you had the E5, the enterprise piece, it did come with this included. So now I do have the $8 plus I have this phone system. So am I good, Gary? Not yet. You don't have a long distance plan. You don't have the ability to make these long distance calls. So now I have to add a calling plan. So Microsoft's calling plan, they have a lot of different plans, but the main plans are $12 a month for domestic, $24 for international, and that gives you about 3,000 minutes. Now, those 3,000 minutes are different than we're used to in our traditional phone system because it's 3,000 minutes both outgoing and incoming, local and long distance. They all come out of that pool because you're in a cloud-based system. There's not a local versus long distance. It's just all out of that same pool, which could be if I'm used to this many minutes a month and now I switch to a Microsoft plan, I'm going to go through those minutes faster, and then my budgeting that I did for this project could be off. So this is something we definitely want to help you with and talk through. So adding these three together, you can see quickly, it's not quote unquote free. And I think I get myself, or I've seen other IT guys get themselves in trouble with an executive saying, hey, I like this. I want to go through using Teams and it's free. I've already paid for it as Office 365. Just turn that on. Well, there's more money to come. There's more features to go. And that's just going through Microsoft. There's a few things to consider if you're using the Microsoft. So the added cost we just went through. Limited SLA. So their SLA, which is their guarantee of the uptime of the phone system, it is all 100% cloud-based. So we have a limited SLA compared to what we typically get with hosted cloud providers. We also have limited technical support. What do I mean by this? Pretty much everybody on this call, I'm sure, is using some Microsoft application, maybe using Excel, maybe using Outlook. Do you call Microsoft when you have a problem with Outlook? How does that going to work, right? Typically, you call an MSP or your IT guy or another vendor. So you're still going to need some sort of support. So if you went straight through Microsoft, who's supporting that after the sale? And that's become a challenge for a lot of our partners. And then the features. I'm not going to go through each feature, but you'll see rolling through. Microsoft as a phone system is young. It's not as mature as some of our partners that have been doing this for 20, 30 years. So things like merging two calls, which is a pretty common thing on a phone system, adding somebody to my call is a feature that just recently got added in last month. So there's stuff that that they don't have that mature system like call recording is kind of a big thing that we hit. So there's a lot of features when you're using 100% the Office 365 and just the Microsoft calling plan that your current system may be providing for you that you're going to miss out on. So one thing we want to advise, and Rob said it earlier, and you'll hear me say it again at the end, we want to be your consultants and help you figure out, if you made this shift, what features in your phone system are you using? What do you rely on for your organization? So now the next way is direct routing. Oh,
Gary, there is one quick question that came through.
Yeah.
Microsoft is constantly making APIs available. Who's to say that these features won't be added in the future?
That's a really good question. Yeah, you're right. They are adding their APIs recently got released not too long ago to add some more of the integration too with partners. But it's hard to predict. So in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, I absolutely assume they will be adding more features and it will mature over time. We just have to sit back and see how long does that take. And again, back to the consulting angle of that conversation, which features are important to your organization that you need to function, and where is it on the roadmap, and what's the likelihood of when it gets released is something we'll have to look at. So that was a good question. You're right. It is continually evolving. So direct routing is another way to do this. So again, try not to be too much of the nerd on the phone. Teams could go to a direct routing partner where basically your phone system goes through the internet and then goes to a data center, and they have what's called a session border controller. It's a SBC, which is a fancy gateway to make that PSTN connection we talked about. So it translates this phone call, puts it on the PSTN so you can call Best Buy or whoever that's outside of your organization. If you went with a partner that did direct routing, they also have the ability, depending on if you went with a PBX-based partner, meaning you're still using their phone system in the cloud, or a PBX-less, so they're just passing through, you can have things like call recording. You can get that feature back. You can get some of your features because you're kind of blending the two worlds together. And there's a lot of momentum in this arena. But again, we're very dependent on Microsoft allowing us to have the APIs to get into the appropriate pieces of the application. And then the final way is that third-party plans. So on the third, Rob, your view of the camera is blocking my slides, so I can remember the exact words there. I just see Rob as I'm going through that piece.
Can I stop you real quick before you move on?
Yes.
Sorry, another question that came through. So I have a relatively new phone system. How do I know if it supports direct routing?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of different phone vendors out there. So reach out to your parallel rep, and we'll talk to you about what is your phone system, what is it features using now, and does it have direct routing capability yet, or is it on its roadmap? So it's hard to go through customer by customer by customer on this conference call and lay it out, but by all means, reach out to us and we can have a deeper conversation about your vendor and if it's using direct routing and what features that does and doesn't give you. So back to third party calling plans, which is the final way I was talking about. This, if we think back to our last slide, as I mentioned before, so you have I've paid for my Office 365 bundle, or now Microsoft 365. Remember, the name is changing. And I've added the Microsoft phone system, so $8 more per user. Instead of having this final piece, which gives me my calling plan, I can have that go through a partner. Now, the positive thing with that, not just is it a competitive, typically I see those rates being unlimited. I see them being cheaper for the minutes after you go over your minutes. You have some more, there's more room for you to shop there, which is great. But if you move them to be your CSP, another acronym, your cloud service provider, if you buy your Office 365 licenses through them, then they can start giving you technical support also. So now when my phone quality suffers, I have someone to call and I can have somebody troubleshoot this. It also gives me some of my advanced features like the direct routing, so I can add some of my features back. And then often it's better call quality because now you're just going directly to them, and then they've, again, has that experience. Most of these are vendors that have been in the phone industry for a long time. You know, as I went and made the transition from being an IT guy to learning the phone world, there's a few things that stood out to me strongly. As an IT guy, if you're going to go surf the web, it can buffer. So if you're watching something on Netflix or you're just sending an email, you don't know for sure how much buffering happened, you know. But if I'm on a phone call and it doesn't come to you exactly as I'm saying it, you'll know because the call gets garbled, right? I mess up on my words. You can't hear me clearly. So not only does it have to deliver it, it has to deliver it on time and in order. So it's kind of a change for the IT world to start trying to put this voice over the internet and keep that voice quality stable. So that's very important. When we talk about this better call quality, you want some of the vendors that have deep expertise and knowledge and history in this. So again, my purpose today wasn't to try to make everyone on the phone engineers. I wanted to help you understand there are a lot of different ways we can accomplish integrating teams into your existing phone system or other partners, if that makes sense. And most importantly, this is what we've been doing for 30 years. We're deep on the phone expertise. Let us come out. Let's have these conversations and see what makes sense and what solution is best for you and your organization. Larissa?
I don't see any questions, so just the last couple of minutes. If you do have a question, you can type that into the Q&A in the chat. And again, if it was last minute, then we will be sure to get back to you. We will be sending a follow-up email to you guys that will include a recording to the presentation. We'll also have a convenient link to a questionnaire that will kind of give us some basic information to help us have that conversation with you guys if it is something you want to talk a little bit more about. So be sure to be on the lookout for the email and click the link to that questionnaire, fill it out, and your rep will be back in touch with you. Thanks again to everyone for attending. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.